Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping into a concept today that, well, it gets talked about a lot, often feels a bit abstract. Unity consciousness.
It really does, yeah. You mentioned unity consciousness, or UC, and people often think it's this, far-off spiritual state you have to get to.
Right, like a destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what the research consistently points to is that UC isn't really a state to achieve at all. It's more like the simple recognition that everything is already one interconnected whole. Invisible.
Okay, simple recognition, but it feels huge because that immediately steps outside our normal way of seeing things, right? That dualistic view.
Subject, object.
Yeah.
Precisely. Our sort of default setting is dualism.
Yeah.
It's me over here and the world out there.
Yeah.
My body, your body, inside, outside, all these divisions.
Yeah.
And UC is really just seeing that those boundaries, those hard lines we draw, are more like conceptual. They start to dissolve, and you see reality is actually seamless.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive, then, is to really unpack this non-dual perspective, this not-two idea. We want to get past maybe the spiritual jargon and look at the practical side. What does this actually mean? What are the implications, even the challenges that make it so, well, potent?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
So let's start with that default setting you mentioned, this feeling of a central I filtering everything. It feels totally separate from the world. And honestly, it's useful, isn't it?
Oh, totally. You need that sense of being a separate self to, function, pay your bills, drive your car, feed the dog, like you said, basic navigation.
Right.
But the key insight, and you see this across so many traditions, is that this self, this I, is really just an appearance happening within consciousness. It's not a solid, separate thing in itself.
An appearance, not an entity. That's a big distinction.
It is. It's crucial. We're not saying the person stops doing things, but the idea of a central controller pulling the strings, that seems to be more of a mental habit, a story we tell ourselves.
Yeah. So if we follow that non-dual investigation, like if we actually try to find this separate I, where is it?
Well, that's the really fascinating part, the challenge. If you genuinely look, is it your thoughts? Is it just the physical brain, this feeling of awareness? You find that the closer you look, the more this idea of a single fixed self just slips away.
Like trying to grab smoke.
Kind of, yeah. You can't logically fence off a piece of reality and say, these are my thoughts versus those are universal thoughts. It doesn't hold up.
It reminds me of trying to find the audience in a play. You see people, sure, but the audience itself is just a concept, a temporary label for a group.
That's a great analogy. So when that sense of a separate self is seen through, when it dissolves under investigation, what's left?
Yeah, what is left?
Just
how free them
this open, boundaryless field where all phenomena, thoughts, feelings, sensations of the world just appear. Unity isn't something you make happen. It's just what's revealed when the illusion of separation is seen for what it is. A useful story, a functional concept, but ultimately not the fundamental truth of reality.
Okay, that brings us right to the core puzzle of non-duality, doesn't it? If reality is fundamentally unified, how come we experience separation so strongly? Why is it so hidden?
Right, that's the paradox. And that's why metaphors become so important. Because the non-dual view isn't saying the self and the world are two different things that somehow need to magically merge.
What's it saying, then?
It's saying they were never separate to begin with. They're just different appearances, different expressions of the same underlying reality.
Our sources mention a couple of classic metaphors to help get our heads around this. The wave in the ocean one is pretty common.
It is, and it's really effective. Think about a wave. It has its own unique shape, its own movement, right? Yeah. Definitely an individual form.
Sure.
But is that wave ever, even for a split second, separate from the ocean itself?
No, of course not. It's made of ocean.
Exactly. Its entire existence, its form, its energy is totally dependent on the ocean, which we can think of as consciousness or this ground of being. The illusion is simply the wave thinking, I'm just this separate wave all alone out here.
And maybe fearing crashing or needing to hold its shape together?
Precisely. And here's a key insight from the material. Recognizing this unity, this UC, isn't about becoming a better wave or a more spiritual wave. It's about stopping the incredible amount of effort it takes to maintain the idea of being separate.
So the effort itself is the problem.
That effort, that constant striving and protecting of the separate identity that's identified as a primary source of our psychological suffering.
Wow. Okay. So suffering isn't just what happens, it's the struggle against what happens by this illusory self.
You got it. Now, the second metaphor, the movie and the screen, might resonate even more today.
How does that one work?
Well, think about watching a really engrossing movie. You see distinct characters, heroes, villains, dramatic landscapes, intense action scenes.
Yeah, you get totally drawn in. They feel real and separate.
Totally. There's conflict, tension, drama. It all appears incredibly separate. But what's the underlying reality of everything you're seeing on screen?
Oh, it's all just light projected onto the screen.
Exactly. The hero, the villain, the mountains, the explosions, they're all made of the very same thing. The light, the screen itself, that single unchanging field.
So you see is like suddenly noticing the screen while the movie is still playing.
That's it, precisely. You realize that all the variety, all the drama, all the apparent separation playing out in your life is actually inseparable from this one single field of awareness of everythingness that allows the whole show to happen.
And what's amazing, our sources point out, is that we actually get glimpses of this all the time. We notice the screen, so to speak, even if we don't call it that.
Absolutely. These moments where the usual boundaries just seem to soften or dissolve naturally, and they're not weird mystical states. They happen in very everyday situations.
Okay, let's run through a few the materials highlight. First one, being totally immersed in nature.
Yeah, think about being deep in a forest, maybe, or just standing by the ocean. Sometimes that hard line between me and the trees or me and the air just fades.
You feel connected.
More than connected. Like the body, the breathing, the wind, the leaves. It's all experienced as one single flowing process. You're not looking at nature. You kind of are that unfolding activity.
Okay. Second, that flow state people talk about in creativity or sports.
Right, where the sense of a doer just disappears. Musicians, athletes, they often talk about this. It's like the action is happening through them effortlessly.
No painter apart from the painting sort of thing.
Exactly that. The sense of a separate self-directing things just isn't there. There's just the doing, the flow.
Then there's deep intimacy or love, where boundaries soften.
That sense of shared presence where the me and you distinction becomes less rigid. There's just being together.
Or finally, profound silence or stillness, like in meditation maybe.
Yeah. Or even just moments of deep quiet. When the usual mental chatter dies down, that identification with the I thought can just dissolve for a bit.
Yeah.
And what's left?
Just awareness.
Just vast, open, boundaryless awareness. And the key point is, these glimpses aren't escapes from reality. They're pointers to what's actually always true, underneath the usual noise.
Okay, so let's get to the real so what factor here. If this shift in perspective happens, even partially, how does it actually change our relationship with the big stuff, the really challenging parts of being human? Let's maybe contrast the two views.
Yeah, this is where it gets really practical, moving beyond just philosophy. Let's take suffering, for instance.
Okay, so the default dualistic view, suffering happens, and it feels intensely personal. This is my pain. I have to fight it, get rid of it, escape it.
Right. Exactly. The pain almost confirms the existence of the me that's suffering. It feels owned.
But from the unity perspective, what changes? Does the pain just vanish?
Not necessarily the physical sensation. The body might still feel discomfort, but the relationship to it shifts dramatically. The realization dawns that, okay, pain is arising, but it isn't fundamentally mine. It's not owned.
Like a dark cloud appearing in the sky, but it doesn't define the sky itself.
Perfect. Or like a painful scene in that movie. It's intense, it's part of the experience, but it's not the essence of the screen. It's an appearance.
So the actual suffering isn't the raw sensation, but the story we attach. This is happening to me and it shouldn't be.
Precisely. And when that sense of ownership collapses, the desperate struggle against the pain often collapses with it. That's where people report feeling this immediate sense of lightness, even if the situation hasn't changed externally.
Okay, second big contrast, our relationship with time. Duality seems totally wrapped up in time.
Absolutely. The separate self is basically constructed out of time. Looks to the past for its identity. I am the sum of my history. And it constantly looks to the future for fulfillment.
Always thinking I'll be happy when I get the job, when I retire, when I find the right partner, maybe even when I get enlightened.
Exactly. Which means the present moment is almost never enough. It's just a stepping stone to some future state.
How does non-duality flip that?
It recognizes that past and future are really just thoughts, concepts appearing right now in this present consciousness. Our sources really hammer this home. Only this present moment is real, is tangible.
You can't actually experience yesterday or tomorrow.
Never. You only ever experience now. So fulfillment isn't something to be found later. It has to be recognized as inherent in being right here, right now, if it exists at all.
Wow. Okay. And the third, maybe the biggest one, death. Duality sees death as, well, the end, terrifying, final. the wave disappearing forever.
Right, and that creates this underlying hum of anxiety for so many people. But from the UC perspective, what we call death is just a change in form. The particular wave pattern subsides, yes.
But the ocean.
The ocean itself remains utterly unchanged. If the self you identified with was only ever an appearance anyway, like a character on the screen.
Then the appearance ends, but the screen remains.
Exactly. The reality that allowed that appearance, that consciousness, is untouched. It's timeless.
So that phrase, what I truly am cannot die, it's pointing to the ocean, not the wave.
That's the understanding, realizing you were the ocean manifesting as this temporary wave, rather than believing you are only the fragile wave.
This sounds incredibly freeing, liberating. But then why the resistance? If this is our true nature, why does the ego, this separate self idea, fight so hard against it?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's the core challenge. The mind, our cognitive apparatus, is essentially wired for separation. It's been crucial for survival.
So it sees unity as a threat.
Pretty much. The self-concept, the ego, interprets this dissolution not as liberation, but as annihilation, as losing itself, losing control, losing meaning. It feels like dying to the ego.
And this resistance can be really subtle, right? Like it can even show up as spirituality.
Oh, absolutely. The spiritual ego is maybe the sneakiest trap. Our sources have great examples of this. Think about someone in meditation having a moment of clarity, feeling that boundless awareness.
Yeah.
And then almost instantly, the dualistic mind jumps back in. Wow, I had it. That was amazing. How do we get that back? Oh no, I lost it.
Right. The classic trap, the separate I suddenly trying to possess or regain the very thing whose nature is ownerless presence.
Exactly. The attempt to get unity is the very movement of separation. Yeah. Nothing was actually lost because that spacious awareness was never absent. The seeking itself reinforces the seeker.
Which brings us back to the practicalities. If we stop seeking, if we start recognizing, what does life actually look like day to day? Does everything just stop?
That's a really common concern. Does it mean becoming passive? Just letting everything happen? We still have responsibilities, right?
Yeah, bills to pay, emails to answer. It can't just be navel-gazing.
No, absolutely not. And this is where we need to be clear. It's not about stopping action. It's about the feeling behind the action changing. It's about dropping the sense that there's a separate burdened me that has to force everything to happen.
Okay, so how does that manifest? Let's take compassion.
Well, if there's fundamentally no separation between you and others, then another person's suffering isn't happening over there to someone else. It's arising within the same field of consciousness that you are.
So helping isn't a choice based on morality.
It becomes less of a calculated altruistic duty and more of a natural response. Like one part of the body automatically helping another part. Kindness just flows more naturally when the otherness barrier dissolves.
Okay, and that lightness people talk about. If I'm not the one effortfully managing my life, what is?
What takes over is often described as spontaneous right action. Life feels lighter because you're dropping that heavy burden of constantly managing and defending the separate self. Decisions still happen, actions still get taken.
But with less struggle.
Less inner conflict, less second guessing, yeah. More like that flow state we talked about. But potentially extending into ordinary activities. It feels more like life is living itself through this form.
Third, you mentioned diminished fear. But the body still reacts to danger, right? The startle reflex is still there.
Oh, absolutely. The body's survival mechanisms remain. But psychological fear, the story of fear, is different. Fear is usually about protecting a localized me from a perceived threat, loss, pain, death.
Right.
When that me is seen as an appearance rather than a solid entity, the emotional stake in protecting it automatically lowers. The body might jump at a loud noise, but the mental narrative of, oh no, I'm in mortal danger, loses its grip, its conviction.
Less panic, more response.
Something like that. And finally, presence. This seems to deepen naturally.
Yeah, because if the mind isn't constantly running off into regretting the past or worrying about the future to secure the separate self.
Where else is there for attention to go but right here, right now? Exactly. Attention anchors more readily in the immediacy of experience. The present moment stops being just a means to an end and is recognized as, well, as the only reality there is, timeless, complete.
So just to loop back and summarize then, this unity consciousness, it's not really an idea to just grasp intellectually or some peak state to achieve through effort.
Right. Because as we saw, the very act of trying to achieve it comes to the place of separation you're trying to overcome. It's a bit of a paradox. Words can only point towards it.
Silence speaks louder sometimes.
Often, yeah. Which leads us to maybe a final thought, something a bit provocative perhaps.
Go for it.
We often frame UC, or awakening, as this huge, transcendent, maybe even otherworldly experience, something totally removed from our ordinary, messy lives.
That's definitely the common image.
But the really profound realization, the one that sinks in deep, is often how incredibly, wonderfully ordinary it all is.
Ordinary. How so?
Meaning, the real awakening isn't about escaping your everyday life to find some special state. It's about recognizing the extraordinary within the ordinary, seeing the seamlessness that's already here.
So not needing a mountaintop, but finding it in, I don't know, washing the dishes.
Precisely. Or, like one source beautifully put it, noticing the unity in the simple act of sipping tea. There's the warmth of the cup, the smell, the taste, your body receiving it, the awareness that's conscious of all of it.
It's all just happening together.
Now, all one seamless happening. In that moment, there's no separation. Unity consciousness isn't some future destination at the end of a long spiritual path. It's the very ground of your being. Right here, right now.